money, Jordan Belfort. Stacking penny stocks while I'm flipping these birds. Sipping on Ciroc, trip 'em up with the words. I done popped the Molly and I think it's be my third. Jordan Belfort.
What is going on, Degen Nation? Tyler Tamboline here, bringing you another Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast this week for the farmers. And we've got no Kenny Kim. We actually have no confirmation. I did get a text from a guy named Kenny Kim in my phone, same number, but with last week going with the image only, not in person. And then this week, the magical food poisoning. I'm not quite sure how Kenny's doing or if he's locked in a basement or what, but hopefully he's doing okay. Got our main man, the resident fill-in, Mr. Ryan Baroff at rbaroff427 on Twitter of the Golflandia podcast with Matthew Wiley, which is now back in business. Love to see that. Ryan, how you doing, man? And appreciate you filling in as always.
Yeah, as always, happy to be here. Sometimes for you and sometimes for Kenny. But yeah, we got an awesome event, awesome golf course, and a stacked field. So let's get into it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a great one. Like you said, finally, it feels like the real start of the season now, right? We still got a rotation on the courses. We got a north and a south. We'll get to it. Many people know Torrey Pines very well. We'll have Ryan bring you some stuff on that later for those that don't know it. But back to the 2-day cuts, back to the, much stronger fields, at least from what we saw. And we'll recap real quick like we always do here, but much different. You mentioned the field strength here. Last week, the leaderboard, we'll name some names. Of course, Hudson Swafford getting the W. Great story there with his dad passing a month ago and making it happen for him. All the stuff he brought up was really heartfelt down the stretch, sort of bringing it up as how he was there for him and helping him and everything he talked about after winning the event. But Hoagie, Hodges, Harmon, Griffin, Molinari is back. McCarthy, some of these other guys. Paul Barjon was in the mix. Like, not quite the leaderboard to be expected. Rahm, Cantlay, Zalatoris, guys like that were mixed in throughout, but I don't think anything was going to move the needle on the Sunday viewing with those football games going on. What were your thoughts of the Amex? How did it go for you? And any Swafford-Peters doubles for you? Thomas Peters getting the job done overseas. What are your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, awesome to see. He won late last year. I think, look, not to play into the narratives too much, but when guys like that miss a Ryder Cup, it does inspire them a little bit. I think Peters really wanted to be there at Whistling Straits. Obviously wasn't playing well, but he won right afterwards, won again. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it. He'll obviously be in the majors. He'll now be in all the World Golf Championships as well. So, yeah, awesome to see that. And then Swafford, I did not have Swafford bet, but myself, as would seem like everybody, he was a very popular DK play. Yeah. It's rare that it works out that well. And so that made it a slightly profitable week for me.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were like double-digit ownership or anything, but guys like Swafford and Bramlett and all these guys at the bottom seemed to come through for once, right? That usually isn't the case. And then, of course, you had Rahm and Cantlay go back and forth over the weekend where, Rahm's going to win this thing. And then, Rahm's dead. It's going to be Cantlay shipping the thing now. Oh, wait, there's Will Zalatoris dropping a record or whatever he's doing out on the course. So it was one of those wild weekends where you kind of just got to chill out, wait for the final day, see what happens. And in the end, Swafford wins. If Kenny was on, I was going to say to him, is Hudson Swafford the new Harris English, who was the new Webb Simpson, or what's the situation here with Swafford? Do you see more of this, or is it just sort of a one-time thing for him?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We saw a lot of last year, especially towards the end of the year, like he was consistently up there with ball strikers, right? He was awesome. But he couldn't get inside the top 20 or top 25 because he can't putt. And as we saw on Sunday, he made some putts. He made everything he looked at, it seemed like, on that back nine. So, no, I don't expect him to be a prolific winner, but, he'll probably get a couple more before he's done.
Yeah, getting back into the mix is always nice. The one other guy I want to ask you before we move on to the Listener League winners, Zakamu, we'll get to him in a second, but Will Zalatoris, his name's going to come up when we get to this tournament. It's already sounds like a popular, your favorite line, quote unquote, first click. I see out there that there's some Will Zalatoris love. Got this, the major last year, this event itself last year, and now played well last week. And look, usually we followed Zalatoris. We know what he's about. Usually the challenge for him on the Webb or Corn Ferry was the putter. And now last week is a totally different event. It's sort of more of a go low event. And he showed up and was able to do that. Do you see any of that clicking for this week, or is he going to be popular and get chalky and be the guy that breaks everyone's heart? What are you thinking here with Willie Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly going to be popular. My first look, he's underpriced also. I think he's 9,200. It seems a little bit underpriced, but yeah, if you're talking about a course that really requires driving distance, probably requires some experience, and it requires a short game, it doesn't scream Will Zalatoris to me. but he's great and the model likes him. I will have some, but I'm most likely going to be underweight. As a tiebreaker, you can look back and see that he missed the cut here at the US Open last year. So I will probably be underweight on Zalatoris.
Yeah, and I appreciate you correcting that because I said the major last year. What I meant was this particular event last year was T7, and then of course last week showing up. And I had someone say today, I think, oh, he's coming in hot. I said, if he's coming in hot, then so is Lee Hodges. Like it's the same, 1 week's result. That's you're coming in hot with, but. I digress. We'll get to it. We're definitely going to go through the entire slate. As always, we'll get to that after. And want to remind everyone before we get into the Listener League winner, this podcast/show is brought to you by DraftKings. We will have a great offer for you guys later from DraftKings Sportsbook still going on during the NFL playoffs, which also, by the way, I noticed all these golf pods lately, Baroff, bringing the football conversation into it. Kenny obviously doesn't want to talk about it as often because the Washington football team is out long ago, myself included. The Ravens didn't even make it. The Bengals did their thing and got in. I know you're a Browns fan, but what were your thoughts on those football games on Sunday? I think that took away from the ownership, even had it have been Rom versus Cantlay in a playoff down the stretch. I don't think anybody besides those that have two TVs, as I highly recommend that you should do, would have been tuning into it. But what were your thoughts on the football games on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, they were great. I actually missed most of the Bucs game, and it looked like a blowout, but obviously they came back. But I mean, that game last night was like the best game I've ever seen. And I think we're going to see more of that. These teams, they're extremely physical, but they can also score quickly. And those quarterbacks are just so good. And it just makes you realize when you have a guy like Baker Mayfield, I don't care how much he improves. Like he's never going to be that ever. So
yeah. That is the challenge. And the AFC North is tough, as you know, like you said, and you get the Bengals still rolling, man. I'm excited we get to see the repeat. That game was really good when the Bengals beat the Chiefs before. I think it'll be a little bit different story this time personally, but I do like to see that. And Burrow, the swag king, as my boy Big T likes to call him. And I think he's right. When you just see Smoking Joe going with them guns around with the cigar in his mouth in the locker room, all that young talent gathered around him, just pumping him up. And to see him go out and get the job done, their kicker announcing it to them apparently before. I'm not sure I fully believe the Andy Reid, when things are grim, be the Grim Reaper. And then he goes out and gets the job done. I don't think I believe that one, but I definitely believe Money McPherson going out and saying, it looks like we're going to the AFC Championship, boys, and then booting the kick. So incredible stuff. But we're here to talk golf. We want to talk real quick about the Listener League winner. We got Zacamu, Z-A-C-A-M-U. Congratulations. Blew the field out, 629. The next closest was 601. He rolled, I don't know how many. I think you and I talked right after Lock last week, Baroff, about these Rom Cantlay combinations and how we looked it up. I know Mayo had tweeted out right away, what is the number? And I went and looked it up on Fantasy Labs. They've got a great tool over there. You can check it out. And it shows the stack seeker for the tournament. And it was 7.7% of the lineups ran Rom and Cantlay together. And so did our Listener League winner. He had Rom, Cantlay, and then he rounded it out with Hoagie, Whaley, Davis Riley, and of course the eventual winner, Hudson Swafford, who was 7% owned here. I think that was par for the course across most tournaments anyway, around that 7% range. Any thoughts on the lineup? Hoagie, Whaley, Riley, Swafford, and then just general strategy with running those two big dogs out at the top.
Yeah, I think that was the way to go. And I mean, it didn't pan out in terms of them winning the tournament, obviously, but got lucky and Swafford did. I built a ton like that. I had a ton of Swafford, had a ton of Molinari, had a ton of Bramlett, obviously. Unfortunately, just a little bit too much Hayden Buckley, a little bit of Davis Riley, who shot about 96 on Sunday, and a little bit of KH Lee, who didn't quite get there. But yeah, that was the build. And I think we saw a ton of those lineups win all the GPPs. Yeah,
and like you said, there was a few that missed out. Hayden Buckley, I'm sure there's a medicine joke there, right? Tastes like shit, and it didn't work this time. But you go back to some of the other guys, Bramlett, Riley, Whaley, like some of these other guys that people were happy to plug in, and they ended up working out. And then you look at some of the scoring. This is just a testament to the variance in golf that we see all of the time that not everybody fully believes in. But if you go look, Davis Riley, 6,800, 82 DraftKings points in 59th place. John Rahm, 11,300, T14, 7 strokes better, 87.5 DraftKings points, only 5.5 more points for all that extra cash, all that extra ownership, and beat him by 7 strokes. But it didn't matter because Riley plugged 2 eagles in. And then, the double bogeys are worse. The double bogeys in general, you only lose a point or two or whatever across the board for those. So just goes to show how crazy it is. Shout out to Gup Gup came in third there. Again, guys, with no Kenny here, remember the course preview and his cash game cornerstones will all be over there on Gup's Corner. He'll have those posted for you guys. So check that out. Anything else on the Lister League before we move on there, Ryan?
No, it's a great team. I think this week will be a little bit different, but then again, like if Rom wins, you'll probably see a double stud team win again. So
yeah, we'll definitely talk about that too, because I think there is going to be some strategy involved with John Rahm. I just saw Kyle Porter tweeted out right before we hopped on. In the 5 times Rahm has played Torrey Pines, no surprise to anyone following along, but in the 5 times, only 11 golfers have ever beat him across those rounds. So it's obviously a place he knows, loves, crushes. His first ever professional win on the PGA Tour. And then, of course, his first major last year after the Memorial and COVID withdraw up 6 strokes, sort of fate, if you will, that he said. So everything that went on there, he loves this spot. So we're definitely going to talk about him. Before we get into that, Ryan, talk to me a little bit again. Doesn't have to be the Kenny Kim breakdown, but just your thoughts, everything you know about the course, stats you're looking at, just things you think are important when we get into it. And then we'll talk some strategy when we get into the tiers later as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talk about it all the time here, but I do think it's a course where experience helps. You don't have to be old. You don't have to play here a lot, but experience here certainly helps because it's tough, right? The POA rough, the POA greens, course is extremely long. I mean, I think the South course can stretch out to about 7,800. I doubt they'll play it that long, but kind of the weather conditions will kind of dictate how they play it. But yeah, so we pay attention with the weather too, because you do have the 1 round at the North course, right? And that's the course that's scoreable. So if we do have some kind of weather wave advantage, you have to pay attention to that and make sure your guys play the North course on the easy day, because that's where the scoring is going to happen. Even par +1, +2 on the South course, you're not out of it at all, right? You shoot 1 over on the North course, you're out of it. And kind of interesting enough, I was looking through the splits. We don't have strokes gained data from the North course, but I was looking back just at guys with a minimum of 3 rounds on the North course. Do you know who's gained the most strokes there?
On the North course?
Yeah.
Jason Day.
John Rahm.
Of course.
And of course, we know how well he plays the South course. So it's John Rahm week. I just think you got to figure out how to get different elsewhere.
Yeah. I think you couldn't have said it better. The stats, everything line up for it. We've seen it in the past too. Like, we joke about it all the time on this show, but Rahm and Palmer, because they partner up, play together. They've always do well at Memorial together, things like that. And it kind of reminds me of that. And I think when I'm looking at stats here, strokes gained, tee to green, just in general is always important to me because it's more of who can do it. We'll talk about John Rahm later on. I believe it was piece of shit fucking setup putting contest week was his course. You did a great job there with the course preview. That's the course preview for next year for the Amex. If you want the John Rahm special, I think that's what it's about. And that's why you have guys like Davis Riley going out and putting up his DraftKings score, because it is that way. And I know some people will say the same here. Again, whoever makes the most putts, the short game. Look at last year, just had Patrick Reed win it on top of the cheating scandal, but he still came through. He had the short game. He won by 5. So the joke or the conversation, I guess at the time, was not really a joke, but even if you had taken the strokes away for cheating, he still got there. Like, he still won handily. It reminds me, speaking of Memorial, of John Rahm with the 2 strokes on grazing the grass beforehand and still won by 7 or whatever, and won by 5 and would have won by 7. It's just little things like that you see along the way. So a lot more can be said about that, but I just think in general, that's the difference. And when you know what you know about Rahm, is it doesn't matter how, like, what he finished, like just outside the top 10 last week or something. That's on a terrible week for him that happens. And he's right there in the mix on a week like this. Yes, the field's stronger, but it still matters of being able to come through for 4 straight rounds. And I know that's something we're going to talk about when we get into these tiers. So listen, before we get into the tiers, guys, want to give you guys a very special offer from DraftKings Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is kicking things off with a huge offer. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56-1 odds on any championship team to win their game. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team is victorious. That's right, bet just $5 on any NFL playoff game, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give new customers an additional $280 in free bets if the team they choose wins their game. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you still have something to play for this championship weekend. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy football contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code FGD, and get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code FGD at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, so we're going to get into the tiers. I do want to hammer home just a couple things if we weren't clear enough for whatever reason. A couple things, Ryan mentioned one, North course, South course. Everybody plays one each. We'll talk some strategy with that, or at least I will in a second. Think just some thoughts I have, and I'll get your thoughts on it as well, Baroff. But just there's that. So after the first 2 rounds, the cut happens, top 65 and ties, and then they move on and play the South course all weekend. Of course, last year, the U.S. Open was here. Rahm went on to win it. We'll talk about him in a second, talk about his first win here back in 2017. And then last year, getting the first major off his back. That's sort of cool, just a little stat to have. But everyone knows Rahm is the play, like you said as well. Just going into it, the second part, kind of just running through this upper tier, the strategy-wise. I was mentioning the courses. You mentioned weather. Having to have a good round on the North course has been extremely important in the past. But I want to get your thoughts on this because couple things come to mind, and I've seen it in the past. This is a trend. Don't care too much about the trend, but I do want to ask just your thoughts on it. Like 8 of the last 11 started on the South, then played the North, crushed over the weekend and got through. And that's where we're talking winners here. That's where the winners came from. But the 3 of the 11 that did not do that was the last 3 years. I feel kind of like standing at a roulette table. Well, it's been red 8 times in a row. It's got to be got to be black now, right? But it's not the case. They did make some renovations to the North course as well, so I'm wondering maybe that had some stuff to play into it as well. But just thoughts in general on the trends and the stats when it comes to those 2 courses in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's any sort of weather, I'm not going to factor it in at all, right? If I had to explain it, I mean, it's hard to get off to a fast start, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So it might be easier just to kind of grind out that first round around even par on the South course and then shoot 4 under the second day on the easy course. But I don't make any decisions on my lineups based on that now.
Yeah, I'm thinking I will run just some wave stacks. It's not too often throughout the season that we get that opportunity. And I think you said it best and kind of how I feel about it. I actually had one of my best PGA weeks here ever a few years ago. And I remember because, by the way, I'm going to drop the nugget. It's also my birthday week if you want to send any presents my way. But I had some good luck. I've had some good luck on my birthday, my daughter's birthday, things like that. And I remember it quite fondly because I played South course, North course was the rotation when at the time. And what I thought of was everything you just said. I think, what if you can, like everyone says, oh, play the easy course, get 5 or 6 under. There's no way you can mess that up on the South course on Friday, right? You'll make the cut. No, what happens is they get a good score. They try to protect it on the tough track. And next thing you know, one mistake leads to another and they fall apart. I think, like you just said, Ryan, could be more important where you get the good little even round on the South course, grind through it. It's a bitch. You grind through that, feel good about it. Now you get finally some easy course on Friday. Again, we'll have to see what weather does. But the point would be, and now back to my original point, well, I'll bring this up, another elephant in the room if we didn't make it clear. This week runs Wednesday to Saturday. That's why I originally brought up the football conversation. They are not going to compete with the championship games on Sunday. So actually what I was talking about was Wednesday, Thursday this week. Friday will be the first day after the made cut for those that make it. So keep that in mind. But the point being still stands. Get through your round on Wednesday on the South course, grind it out, go on Thursday, be able to play this easier, quote unquote, easier North course, get through that, no problem, and breeze through the cut line. And then just whatever happens over the weekend. But 6 of 6, as always, will be more imperative. The obvious spoken there, of course, but you get it. I think that strategy can be sound. It's not too many times throughout the season that we get opportunity for wave stacking and that, unless there's severe weather. This is one spot where I think the double course rotation actually helps versus last week, much tougher when there's 3 courses in the mix. So let's move on though. Let's go here, Ryan. We'll get right into it. We've got who we talked about already a bunch, Jon Rahm at the top, 11-2. Another guy right after him that you're usually pretty high on as a golfer in general, Justin Thomas, 10-9. And then of course, all the way down to your boy at the bottom. You'll get to the others in between, but Daniel Berger, 10,000. Really good event last time out. He's been having some good run through the swing season. I know a lot of stuff is out there now with stats in relation to weighted stats. Rick Gaiman posted some stuff. I've said this forever about Berger. It's, he plays all the stronger fields. That's why when he goes and plays next week's event last year, the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and ships it, it's not a surprise because the tournament is much worse as far as strength of field goes. But what are your thoughts on this 5-figure range up here?
I mean, I think you got to make a decision on Rahm first and foremost. I will have Rahm. I'll be overweight on Rom. I might lock Rom because you can still pair him with another stud because the pricing is pretty soft this week. So I mentioned, Rom has the best scoring average on the North course. We don't have a lot of rounds there, but on the South course, if you remove Adam Long, who's played that course a total of 1 round, Rom also has the best record scoring average, strokes gained on the South course. So I think and he played fine last week, obviously, right? So I think you're playing him. I think JT is really interesting. As you said, I always play JT. I will probably have some this week, but I find myself really drawn to Dustin Johnson for $600 less and probably a much lower ownership. We haven't seen him in a while at the Zozo. He had a very mediocre, I think it was like T46 or something. But if you look at that, he opened with a 74 and then he shot like 66, 66, 67. So if he had done that in round 1, he would have been tied for 3rd. And I think we'd be having a different conversation. So for me, it's probably Rom and then DJ and then JT, which I guess means no Hideki, no Xander, no Berger. Berger's overpriced. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think like you said, that was why I was going to bring it up with Berger, and I brought it up with you. It's a good stat line if you want to go look at models and numbers, and everything's going to pop for him. And you look at, what was it? I think it was 467s, whatever he drew up. Again, totally different course. Yeah. It's a huge scoring fest versus this, but his tee to green game has been so sound. Did you have something else?
Well, I think with Berger, not to typecast him, but Honda and Sony and Hilton Head and Memphis, they're these shorter, narrower, windy Bermuda tracks, right? This is the polar opposite of that. Not that he can't play well here, but I'm not going to pay $10K for him. I would probably, if he was 8,600, yeah, I'd probably have some. He's not a $10K golfer on this golf course in this field. There's no way.
The argument might be that people will pitch to you, though, is what about at the U.S. Open? Played it, full conditions, T7 for Berger there. Again, the winning score was 6 under. We remember the great ending there out of the bunker. Rom had to make that decision to beat Louis Oosthuizen. Unfortunate for him, but you know how it goes. English, Morikawa, Guido, Brooks, those guys were all up there. Xander, and then Berger with Scheffler. So I guess that would be the argument. But again, like you said, 10K, it makes it a bit tough. And when you just have to go up $1,200 to get John Rahm, and there's going to be guys we like below him as well, I tend to agree with you some there. Anything else you want to add on your boy?
Well, I think U.S. Open setup's going to be a little bit different too, right? There's always going to be an added premium on driving accuracy there. And here at this event, it's all about driving distance, right? Yes, he can probably make some birdies. He's going to scramble pretty well. Poa is not his best surface. He's not long. He's just not a 10K golfer in this field.
Yeah. So I agree. I think you made some very good points there, actually, separate to that, just in general. Like you said, is he going to make the cut? Probably. Is he going to pay off 10K and be someone that you absolutely need come Sunday? Probably not, right? That's a better way of putting it with all the features that you added in as far as what we expect to see, and then the comparison to the U.S. Open conditions. So I like that. I'm with you on I like the 2 at the top. DJ, I struggle with. I definitely did not struggle clicking the bet button this morning at 22-1. I thought that was pretty simple. You had messaged me and it was already done. So I liked that call. I just wasn't as high on him here. I just worried more about the play. I guess the other conversation piece is about not playing, I should say. And then the other conversation piece is around Xander, all the media that gets thrown around of growing up here, high school course, over 100 rounds played. Anything there with that? Or, do you think he'll go less owned than normal just because people are so into Rahm here? And would that be a reason to move to him, or any other thoughts on Xander before we go on?
I mean, yeah, if you're looking for a reason to play Xander, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I don't play him. I don't play him at this price point. Obviously not a course he's done well at for whatever reason historically. And again, I'm just going to have a ton of Rahm and DJ and some JT. So everyone else is just kind of left out.
Yeah, and that brings us to the 9K range anyway. I'll flip to you again right here, but we got Bryson down to Leishman. You're usually the Leishman whisperer, so we could start there. But at the same token, you just mentioned playing a couple of these guys up top. Does it seem right now, again, we've only got 2 nights to sort of sleep on this thing, so it's kind of a first look, but kind of you got to make some decisions, and you're getting there, it sounds like. But do you think this range will go overlooked because of that? And then are there guys in this range that you like?
There's only 2. And luckily for me, they're all the way down at the bottom. So it would be Zalatoris and Finau, I think. I see the argument for Mark Leishman as well. But when you're saying for $100 more, you can get Finau and Zalatoris, it's kind of a no-brainer for me. So I will sprinkle in those 2 if I do mass enter. But again, it's going to be a lot of double stud teams for me this week.
Yeah, kind of like some of the guys at the top. I guess Scheffler, going back to that example I just gave at the U.S. Open, definitely different conditions, but you mentioned just the distance can help. A guy that can go low on the North course, I think of him like just an example where you're taking on some risk and he's expensive, but if you get that out of him, like, I don't know, I think I would feel better playing a guy like Scheffler over a Berger for 500 less. And I know I'm still taking on risk, but at least I feel like he could pop that 64 out or something on the North, have himself a grind through the South course or vice versa, and then be able to make it happen over the weekend. You never know. And I know a lot of people are betting him at 30-1 as well. Any additional thoughts on him?
I think the same argument's there for Sam Burns, right? Like you talk about a guy who he can just pop randomly because he's just really good. He makes a lot of birdies. He can score. But yeah, I kind of agree. Like if I was looking at that Brooks, Burns, Spieth range, I would take Scheffler over all of them for sure.
Yeah, and one thing I'd say about that too, I agree with you 100%, but just like, I'm more fine with kind of how you mentioned up top, Matsuyama, Schauffele, Berger. Like if I'm not playing them and I don't care that much, yes, I'm going in on Rahm. But if I put Rahm with a 9K guy, I think those lineups they set up perfectly fine for a course like this. And you can put in some Burns, some Scheffler, Finau, who you mentioned, Will Zalatoris. You can get lineups like that, no problem, and still have plenty of guys down below that you can play comfortably, where again, they can definitely get hot enough to make a cut for you. And then maybe not Davis Riley type points from last week at T59, but still come through and get you a top 40, top 30 and be in the mix. And at courses like this, sometimes that's all it takes. Again, being back to a 2-day cut here, that's going to be important to get those extra 2 rounds over the weekends. Anything else in the 9K range? If not, we can move to the 8K range.
Yeah, I'm going to take a hard stance here and say that Jordan Spieth will miss the cut. Absolutely don't like this course fit for him at all here. And he's coming off of 1, having a baby, 2, the last 2 times we've seen him basically been dead last. Pretty sure he missed the cut here last year as well. It just doesn't seem like a Spieth track.
It is a bold take though, because right now the reigning champion for most cuts made on the PGA Tour is Jordan Spieth, with his last missed cut being 20 cuts ago at this tournament. So bold, maybe not bold for the fact that it was here and you're saying he'll go again, but it's still Jordan Spieth on 20 made cuts in a row. I think it's pretty bold. And then don't forget about Finau. People might not know Milton Poha Finau is Tony Finau. That is his real name. And we're back here. So I think you could see some Tony Finau love out there. He'll be popular though. That's how it always is, but I like that call. Another guy I like though is right below him. He'll probably get some ownership as well, but Taylor Gooch at 8,900. But then this range, I want to talk to you about this, Baroff, because Reed, Wolf, Homa, all these guys are getting brought up. And for me, like I go through 3 or 4 different sources to try and see what I like about a guy. And I'm just not seeing enough on any of them. And I think they're going to be popular. Reed won here last year, still played okay the first couple events out. Wolf, terrible last week, but I already saw Ben Coley post him out. People are going to talk about how they'll give him a free pass. This course fit is better. You go back, I believe, last year, T15 at the major here. So there's going to be that factor brought up. And then Homa pretty much fits all the stuff that goes with it, except for the fact at the majors, it's been more of a challenge. But the last 2 times here in general, winning the Genesis at Riviera, California guy, all those factors. What are your thoughts on this 8K range and those guys, particularly there, Reed, Wolf, and Homa?
Yeah, this is a very tough range. I could see it going both ways. I actually don't think Reed's going to be very popular. So if you like him and you want to gamble on that, on the course history, I do not think Reed's going to be very popular. Just kind of going through these, I would say I'm out on Gooch, probably out on Connors here. I never played Matt Wolf. I totally agree. This is a better course fit for him, undoubtedly, but I don't think the ownership is going to be that much lower. Like he may not be 21% like he was last week, but if he's 15, 18%, I still don't have any desire to play that. I like Homa. Seen a lot of people bet him, so he could get a little bit popular. I think if I had to pick one here, just based on course fit and low ownership, it's probably Ryan Palmer. I think he's going to be a popular name, and maybe you see him bet, and maybe you see people talking about him, but people aren't going to pay 8,100 for Ryan Palmer in this field. There's just no way.
Yeah, I agree with you. We talked about it earlier. Where if you expect John Rahm to go well, which we do, then it's always a good idea to pair a little Ryan Palmer with him, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And the point that you made, I always said this. It's been one of my sayings for a long time now. Is people will talk about him, but will they click the button? And that's the thing. When you've got all those other guys around him, I really don't see it. I think actually Mav McNeely will get more love here too, and maybe for good reason. If you look at some of his stats and comparables, I think he could make some sense. But I do think more will go to Homa. I agree with you on the Reed thing as well. I think for whatever reason, people just don't like to go back to that, or they'll be able to convince themselves that, look, it was all short game. That's the thing. I know if Kenny was here, he's talked about it plenty of times. He probably loved Reed because realistically, he's cheap enough. He's played okay. And he always loves Reed on longer, harder courses. And that's exactly what we expect to see here 3 out of the 4 rounds. Again, it's still Patrick Reed. Anything can happen, but coming off the win here last year, it's tough to say. So I don't hate that. I like McNeely down at the bottom. I love the Palmer call, but I want to get into the 7K range because I know there's a guy right at the very top that you mentioned to me today. And I heard you mentioned earlier about having a bunch of Francesco Molinari last week. I missed the memo on Molinari, but that's okay. We can get back on track this week here together. You like Justin Rose, though, I think, this week. What are your thoughts on Jay Rose and then the guys down below, maybe down to 7,500? We'll start there.
Yeah, so I think Molinari last week, and I'm probably going to go back again this week, even though it's not a great course fit. Molinari, he's now living in California, obviously not playing a lot, but he gets to a course like that. It's a pretty easy setup. It's all about ball striking. It's a pretty weak field. I thought that was a fair price for him last week. But yeah, I really like Justin Rose. He started to find something towards the end of last year. Ball striking came back a little bit. He played well at the Hero. Not that that matters all that much, but he played okay last week. He had a triple bogey. I think he had a double bogey. But then yesterday, the final round was his best ball striking round in years. I think he gained almost 3 shots approach, a couple of shots off the tee. He's coming to a course that he plays just as well as about anybody here. Obviously, he's won here, likes tough golf courses. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, people might mention his name, but for 7,900, I don't think they're going to click that name very often.
It's been a long time since people have been clicking Justin Rose's name at a high enough clip for it to matter. So I definitely can get behind that. I think that's a good call. And like you said, just tough tracks in general, it's always a risk. But when you think about the other names you're clicking in this range, like Keegan Bradley, Siwoo Kim, Billy Horschel, Mackenzie Hughes, all these names, why not Justin Rose? So I got to agree with you on that one. Going down to some of the others here, not too much, maybe some Lanto. I don't know if your thoughts on Tringali doesn't really seem like a great spot for him, but the guys
my thoughts on Tringali.
Well, I do, but I'm saying I think others will think differently, and I think others will still like, the price tag is now 7,600. They've seen consistency. They'll look at cuts made, things like that, where they'll want to factor that in. So I could see that being a more popular play. Even like Molinari played good last week, but I think more people would think on the other side that it's not going to continue, or it's not as good of a fit, or whatever you might find. Now, the one note for Molinari, again, even last year wasn't really playing good, but then came T13 at the US Open. Again, like you said, sort of a grinder's paradise, as I called it last week. That would fit the mold as well. But these two guys I want to ask you about here at the bottom, because they're popping up in everything, the early stuff, the models, all of that. But Luke List and Aaron Wise, again, tougher names to click. Sometimes there's a little bit more risk associated with those names, some putter letdowns and a guy like Luke List, but they are popping up. And when you are looking at tee to green stats and things like that, whether you're looking last 6 months, I know the big thing last week was don't look at the last 50 rounds, because sometimes those rounds are from 3 years ago, but look at the last 6 months for some of these guys. You look at the last, 50 rounds in general, the numbers that pop for every site out there right now. List and Wise look to be pretty popular and showing up everywhere in good shape. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, I can certainly see why. It's not close for me. It's Luke List of the two of them. I will definitely be playing him. It's kind of interesting because, like, in my model that I ran today, all the names popping in the 7s are like the worst names there. I can tell you. I like List. I like Hoagie. I like Molinari. It's just going to be one of those weeks where you just have to kind of play those names. I like Wyndham Clark, who popped a little bit last week. I think he's a great fit here in terms of the guy who just bombs it, putts well. POA is his best surface. So, yeah, it's a lot of gross stuff here.
There is. I saw Johnny Vegas popping up again after missing the cut last week. The Wyndham Clark one's pretty strong, actually. If you look, just everything he's been doing the last 4 times.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He came out of nowhere last week. I didn't have any of him last week. Apparently people did. He played well, and then you dive into it, and he's got the distance. He's got the POA pedigree. And I think in that same mold, like, you have Cameron Davis right there too. You talk about a guy who is long, makes birdies, dominates par 5s. He's been playing pretty well. Like, I'm going to go for those guys in terms of a kind of boom or bust roster construction with Rahm and someone else.
Yeah, I like that call. And I like the Hoagie call as well. Just sticking with him. If I was going to stick with someone again who has the game, can have the upside, he could pop the low score out on the North course when it matters. Like there's a lot of upside for a guy like him. So you got Hoagie, Cam Davis, who you mentioned. I like the Wyndham Clark call. I saw some mentions of, going back to Swafford. People just never seem to do that after a win, right? But this is one of those more interesting spots where it's not like when JT wins and then comes out as the highest priced golfer the next week. This is Swafford wins. He still has length. He looked pretty good last week. All the stats line up, and now back at 7,200. Any interest in him? And then what about Hoffman and Patrick Rogers? That was two other guys I had here that I want to talk about.
Yeah, I probably will not go back to Swafford. I think, again, he got the price hike, he got the win, and we're coming to a completely different golf course. I don't even know his history here. I haven't looked into it, but imagine it's not so good. I will probably gamble, play some Hoffman. He's obviously from San Diego. He's played okay here before. Obviously an excellent ball striker. Patrick Rogers, yes, makes sense. He's got a pretty good short game. Is it fun to play Patrick Rogers? No. I would probably rather play Cam Champ, who's like just as bad. Or I'd rather go back to Gary Woodland, who missed the cut last week. So we talk about flop lag all the time, right? You play a guy 1 week, he missed the cut, and then same thing with Hoagie last week, right? Everyone played him at Sony, opened with a 66, and then missed the cut on the number. Why did they give up on Hoagie? And he punished them last week. You might see the same thing with Gary Woodland this week.
Make a note of that. I think it's an interesting one for sure. The flop leg is definitely real. We see it all the time. And if you liked him last week, it was because of the club down aspect. We talked about it. I thought that would work. It did not. There's an angle, right?
He loves this golf course. He plays well here all the time. He's won a major in California. Play Woodland. Don't give up.
Yeah, I like that call. What about Mickelson in California?
I didn't say play the guy who was dead last. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely no Mickelson here.
And I got one more flyer that I'll continue to ride this guy. I've been playing him a lot. I know our guy Skyler at Skyhoke does the show there with Tom Jacobs. You guys should check that out right here on the Mayo Media Network. I know Tom had the Peters pick last week, Tom Jacobs, which was awesome to see. And Skyler is a big fan of Alex Smalley. A few guys on Twitter like him. He's not well known, but the guy has played some pretty solid golf. He's sort of in that mid-range of what will show up, but I think he could still show up here, and he's 7,100. You like him at all?
I've played a lot of them. I think, again, last week was a better course, kind of iron play, not as long, not as difficult. Right. I don't think he's a POA guy at all. So again, I'm probably going to play him more when we get back to the East Coast. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's a good way to put it too. Going down into the 6K range this week, I believe it's 83 guys, maybe a few more once we it'll be 87, I guess, once we get the Monday cues in, which we're definitely going to talk about for a second later on. But you've got at the top here, Adam Svensson. Hurt my feelings last Sunday. I had a lineup that was a runner in the big $15 on DraftKings. He posted a 75 on Sunday, still finished top 40 or whatever. And it was just one of those weekends where if you had that go right, that would have at least made me profitable, maybe not ship the thing, but it would have been nice to have that happen. He's here. There's a bunch of names down here, though, so it's more of pick who you like, and we can go through it. But what do you like in this 6K range?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I'm absolutely. We talked about flop lag. Not that Svensson was bad last week, right? I'm going to go back to Svensson. Absolutely. I kind of have to go back to Hayden Buckley too, if that's what you're going to do. I was going to say. I don't think it's as good of a course for him, but he's shown enough that I think he can play at a lot of places. I'm going to play the same guys. I'm going to play Bramlett again. And then I'll tell you who we need to play this week. You talk about guy who's played tough golf courses well, guy who can score, guy who's very long, has a decent short game. One more hint, he's from Canada. Pendrith.
Taylor. Our guy, yeah. Hey, and
this guy's played well in majors. He is long as hell. He makes a lot of birdies. I was shocked that his price was this low. I think it's a great time to play Taylor Pendrith. I thought we'd already talked Svensson, but I thought you were going to bring up the original unicorn, Jared Dutois, that just played his way into this. That's your guy from way back. I think it's 4 or 5 years now, maybe further back. You were literally writing articles at the time. First article I wrote, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the original unicorn. I think it's the first time I ever really, learned about you or like found you on Twitter and started chatting or whatever. And I think that was it. And it was just funny to see that he played his way in today. Jonathan Bird also played his way in today. That's a couple of the Monday cues that will be more well known. But yeah, I thought you were going to bring up my other Canadian guy, Jared Dutois. But there's not much, I guess, for me. Like, I think there's enough guys in the 7K range. But I'm okay with plugging two of these guys in because, you go down to the guys you mentioned, like Bramlett, who I definitely bet at 200-1. I'll talk about that in a minute. Love the Pendrith call, though. Definitely, I've talked the story on him in the past, those that don't know, but under Corey Connors' wing, living with Corey Connors and his wife, watching Corey Connors come onto the scene and do his thing and sort of had his own little run there for a bit, but hasn't been doing as much lately. But again, if you liked him all those other times, why go away from it now? Bramlett, I think you just continue with it. The other guy that goes sort of with your Hayden Buckley piece there would be, for me, Cameron Young. I think he's another talent that you could just play. Two wins on the Corn Ferry Tour last year. Definitely a guy that's capable, and I think he's good all around games. So at 6,700, he'd be in the mix for me as well. And then after that, there's honestly not too much I love. Is there anybody at the bottom of the barrel that you like, or we can move on to bets?
No, not too much. I'll say one more thing about Bramlett. He closed with a 67 on the South Course last year. So obviously, it's a golf course he can play. But yeah, I don't think you need to drop down too low because even if you do want to play Rahm and a 9K guy, like I mentioned, you have a bunch of guys from 68 to 74 or 76 who you can play, and it's probably going to be my build this week.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to go about it. I agree with you 100%. Let's move on. Let's go to bets here. I've got 6, and I'm calling these the NFT bets of the week because there's a very strong sense of community in these bets. So that's why I'm calling them that. But I've got DJ at 22. I could not get the Brooks 40 myself, but I saw Will Zalatoris at 35 and Brooks at 35. I chose Brooks. I know you're eligible to play both. It's a bet. It's against the books. It's not against each other, but I just couldn't imagine hitting the Will Zalatoris button when I can push the Brooks button. I'll try it. It worked at the Waste Management Phoenix Open last year at 40, I believe, or maybe it was 50. I can't remember now. But yeah, 35. Others got it at 40. Great for them. I'm excited. Hopefully we can get there on one of these. I bet a couple others that I didn't talk a lot about, but I like the numbers. Lanto, McNeely, and Homa all at 70 or 80. And then the Bramlett at 200. I just can't miss that one if it somehow hits. Like you said, T18 last year and closed strong on the South Course. So at 200-1, I'm with it. And then give us, if you got a few, I know you're going to post them on your Twitter at rbaroff427. You guys should go follow that. And then also the Euro bombs. I know the Dubai Desert Classic this week. You got to have something for us there. Maybe some doubles. I don't know.
Yeah, might as well. That field is still stacked. It's very likely one of those top 4, 5, 6 are going to win. You have Rory and Hovland and Morikawa and Lowry and Hatton. There's still a lot over there. I only bet 3 here. I bet DJ. I think we both kind of saw that one right away. I bet Finau too. I think it's a great spot for him. I like him, but I'm probably going to be underweight just because of the way my roster builds go. So I wanted to get some exposure there. And then I mentioned Justin Rose. I got him at 75-1. You add in the top 5 there. I think it's a pretty valuable bet. I like some bombs, but again, I just don't think in this field, right? There's just so many guys at the top that I think if I fire a couple bullets after that, it's going to be Rahm doubles. So.
Yeah, I tried the John Collin Rahm Morikawa double last week and it did not work. So, speaking of some of those names over there, I wish I had fired Peters into the doubles but it was not going to have Swafford, so it did not matter. In the end, I like that call. You'll post it out, like you said, on your Twitter, all the final bets and numbers and those doubles that you'll have there, which is great. For one and done, just final, we'll round out with that. I'm going to go I was going to go Rahm and just burn him now because just how good he is. I know he'll be popular, but just take what I can get from him. Do you think there's any reason to save him and go with a guy like Finau? Because I'm kind of feeling the same thing you just said, where I just don't think I'll have a lot of exposure to him, but that's the way I could get after him without betting him because I also don't think he wins. But at least in one and done, he'd have a chance for upside and not have to burn. And maybe he does, right? That's how I get my exposure and hedge. But what are your thoughts on saving John Rahm or using him now?
I'm on the same way. I'm taking Finau this week, and I will be saving Rahm for a major.
Yeah, I guess I've said that wrong. You don't want to really take a guy in one and done if you don't think he can win, but it is Finau, guys. We're still talking about here. We're realists on this show. We're degenerates, but we're realists. So we got to bring it up at that point. So Awesome, man. Let the people know where they can find you, and then I'll get us out of here.
Sure. Yep. As Tyler said, RB427 on Twitter. DMs are open. I will post my bets later on, and I am hopping onto the Golflandia podcast shortly.
Yeah, it's always good. It's good to have you guys back. Love Wiley. His content is awesome. It's just different than everybody else's, so I appreciate that. He just posted out some good stuff over the weekend there. And so, yeah, you guys know where to find me on Twitter at @ToeTagAndTambo. Hit the subscribe button, like button here for the Mayo Media Network for this show. Check out the other show I talked about with Tom Jacobs and Skylar Hoke doing the DP World Championship. That's awesome. And then, of course, over at Run Pure Sports, you guys can check me out there. All the content. We will have a free show. So if you're wanting to check out some of what we've got going on over there, it'll be some of the same from this, but a different perspective. Might have Big T on the show tomorrow night as well. We're going to do a free show on YouTube on the Run Pure Sports channel. So check that out. If you want to get signed up over there for all the sports, it's one price. You can head on over to runpuresports.com, use promo code DEGEN50. That's DGEN50 to get yourself 50% off the first month. That is it. Ryan, again, thank you for coming on. We wish Kenny the best. We hope he's okay. Should be back for next week. I was teasing it earlier. I expect him to be back for next week. A lot of good stuff on the go. Another great tournament. Feels like the start of the season. Let's win some motherfucking money. DGen Nation.